Coming up on today's edition of the Art Marketing Podcast, we're talking about 2 trains, 2 tracks, no brakes. Specifically, a new way to contemplate your art, your photography career, what you should be working on, and resetting your expectations for the greatest chance at success. Just got back from a trip with my family, and for the record, I have a wife and 2 small boys. The trip was much needed as it gave me some time to unwind and reflect, and as it turns out, to closely observe some interesting kiddo behavior. And the travel days in this one were long and brutal, and with a 5 and a 7-year-old, I did what any modern parent would do. I made sure the iPads were fully charged, I had backup batteries, and I paid for on-plane Wi-Fi. Older parents, how you did this without technological devices, I have no idea, but respect to you guys. Now, my kids, both of them were playing this particular iPad game in which things dropped from the sky. And in the left-hand corner of the screen and the right-hand corner of the screen were cats, and you essentially moved with either your right hand or your left hand these cats side to side so that they ate these things that were falling from the sky, right? And as I watched my kids playing with these games, or playing this game, I should say, and, I watched a significant chunk of time being invested. I watched the reps and sets and practice increase, and my kids were getting ever more dexterous and good at operating these 2 cats at once. It would start out, you would just be operating the cat on the right-hand side, and you'd be moving back and forth, and then it would switch, and you'd be operating the cat on the left-hand side. And then it would go to the 2 of them at the same time. You're driving the one on the left, you're driving the one at the right, and then the speed would increase and increase and increase. And after observing this for a while, it sort of gave me a chuckle, because it's essentially the task before you as artists and you as photographers if you want to have a successful business. Hence the 2 trains, 2 tracks, 2 cats. So let me start by defining what success is, and then we can get into these 2 trains, these 2 cats. And to be clear, I think everyone has a different definition of success, what qualifies as success for them, different ambitions for the size of their business. But just to give this thing some teeth, I want to kind of start with some real numbers. And let's just say a successful art business, for the points of, or for the perspective of today's podcast, is an art business, a photography business that is doing $100,000 per year in gross sales. Gross sales is before expenses, taxes, insurance, all of that, okay? So it's not what you take home at the end of the day, it's just your total gross sales. And for the purposes of further simplicity, let's just say the fine art business, the art business, the photography business here in question is directly selling fine art in the form of originals, limited editions, prints, and merch, okay? Not all the rest of the various different revenue sources, teaching classes, and the service side of a photography business or any of that. So just selling the fine art. So how are artists and photographers, broadly speaking, going to achieve in 2023 and beyond that $100,000 gross sales a year goal? And in my experience, after talking to hundreds and thousands of you, having 10,000 plus customers at it for 5 to 7 years now, looking all of that data, everything that I've read, it boils down to 3 ways. If you want to achieve a 6-figure a year business and gross sales as an artist or a photographer, there are 3 main ways to get there. Number 1, everyone's big dream, being in a gallery in which they handle absolutely everything. All you have to do is create. They handle all the marketing and the selling. You get paid. This sounds like a wonderful world, right? So let's say you did $100,000 in gross sales at a gallery. Great job, by the way, well done. Then we subtract the 50% haircut that the gallery takes, and then you're left with $50,000 in actual gross revenue. Then you subtract the money it takes to rent your studio, your materials, your camera gear, your travel, etc. And now we're down somewhere around $40,000 or $35,000 a year. Then we get to the painful part of that, okay? Making $35,000 a year is not exactly a living wage and not exactly what everyone aspires their art career to be. And the percentage of artists and photographers who are even in this situation, which is $35,000 to the bottom line per year, is extremely, extremely small in terms of the percentage of total artists and photographers out there. I would say that it's less than 5%, and that is being generous, meaning if I took 100 artists, all they're trying to sell their art or photography, there are 5 that are doing $100,000 a year out of the 100 in an art gallery. Again, that's being generous. If we wanted to say double those numbers to paint a rosier picture, let's triple them. So artists and photographers doing $300,000 a year in gross sales in a gallery, taking home essentially $150 per year, less expenses, over 6 figures a year. That percentage is less than 0.1% of artists and photographers that are attempting to sell. And I get that data from a combination of sources. I have it roughly compiled based on talking to artists, all the industry reports that I read, the $20 million Stuff Shark book. That one's great. Look that thing up on Amazon. And then you should also look up the Freakonomics podcast on the art industry, right? So wherever those numbers truly fall, the odds are just not good of making it in that modality and that way of doing things. And I sort of compare it to the number of people that you know that play a sport versus the number of people that you know that are professional athletes in that sport. Those are sort of the odds. I'm not going all the way to like lottery odds, but it's kind of like becoming a professional athlete. So they're not good. So it's just not a viable path for most. So what is the second way? The second way are the road warriors, the show and fairs crowd. And you are doing anywhere from, let's call it 25 to 45 shows a year. And yes, you're dealing with the booth fees and the setup and the teardown and the weather and the long days on your feet and the travel and the crappy hotels and the food and all the rest of that. And yes, you have to deal with the fact that some shows are hits and some shows are duds. But on balance, if you do that number of shows, it is an extremely, extremely viable path towards getting to the 100K gross a year and oftentimes beyond that. And if you go down that path, you stand a way, way higher percentage possibility to getting to the 100K threshold. The reason most artists don't do it, though, is because of life reasons, right? It's not just the booth fees and the travel expenses, but you're gone from your family, your friends, your job. It's a very, very difficult life, a difficult way of doing things, but it's also very beneficial. All the difficult stuff always yields the highest results because you keep 100% of what you keep. You end up acquiring emails if you're doing it correctly all year long, tons of them. You're acquiring new buyers. Some of those buyers return into collectors, and those collectors are with you for life. So, if you were a young artist or a young photographer without kids, boys, it's a great thing to do and knock out when you're young. I think it's a great thing to do all the time. You can only do a couple a year, 3 or 4 a year. But, and I would say too that some of my most successful customers at art storefronts did do this in their younger years. They grinded hard, and now they're in their 50s and 60s and have a great size art business in which they continue to sell year after year to all the buyers and leads that they captured all over those years, right? So bottom line, it's a great way of doing it, but it's not without a high level of difficulty and a high level of disruption to your life as you're currently living it. What is the third way? The third way is marketing and selling art directly to the consumers yourself via your website, via marketing. And, I believe that this is by far the best choice of the 3. And the reasons for that is you are in total control. You keep all of your revenue. You know who purchases your work. You can do it without leaving your house for the most part. And I would even go as far to say that out of the 3, it's actually pretty simple to do. When I say simple, it is simple. It's simple, but not easy. Not easy in that it takes years and years of marketing to get there. Oftentimes selling almost nothing or very little for the first few years. And that is a painful reality that nobody ever wants to talk about. Yet if you stay at it and you remain diligent, you can get there, stay there, and continue growing year after year after year. Bottom line is, I believe it's the best option of the 3, with the rub being that it takes years and years and years of getting good at marketing. And so those are the 3 ways to grow an art business today. Now, the fact that I love seeing a blend of those 3 aside, really in any combination whatsoever, the third option is just the most viable for most folks out there. And also, I think this needs to be said, there are no other options I'm aware of that occur in any anything resembling a trend or, let's say, statistical significance that get you there. I've talked to tens of thousands of artists year in, year out, been doing that for years, and perhaps one out of that bunch claim they are doing even 50,000 plus gross on the marketplaces, Etsy, Fine Art America, Saatchi, Redbubble, take your pick, any of the rest of them, right? There's some fringe stories that you hear here or there about weird additional revenue sources and everything else, but the big 3 are the big 3. Those are the ones that most people fit into. And so I think when you sit down and you have the personal come to Jesus and you say to yourself, I am going to do this. I am going to make this happen. I want to have a thriving art business. I want to support my family with this. I want to build it into something amazing. And you come to terms with that. You're going to build something viable and long-term that is a real business. The path becomes clear. And it's either option number 2 or option number 3. Odds of anything else happening to get you there are so low, they're not even worth considering. Stated another way, if you are working on anything aside from number 2 or number 3 way to get there, you are likely laboring under false premises or working on utter, total, and complete nonsense if you're not doing 2 or 3, wasting your time, your energy, your talent, your life on hope, which just doesn't really mathematically pencil. All of which, once that time is gone, it's gone for good. We don't get that back, right? You're inflating left balloons, I could even say. You're Sisyphus pushing the rock up the hill for it to come rolling right back down. 2 roads diverged into a wood. One is the hobbydom and one is to having a business. And so I think that's really important to come to terms with. And I'm not lecturing from some high hill saying this is the only way to make it. By all means, do you. But I'm saying these are the facts on the ground as I see them in 2023 that applies to most artists. And so I think knowing that, accepting that, coming to terms with the fact that there is not anyone that's going to market your art for you. It just doesn't happen in any measurable numbers. It's unicorn status if it does. So you have to be the one to do it. And this is where I arrived at my 2 trains, 2 tracks, no brakes. This is where I started in with, oh my gosh, my kid's driving the cats is no different what artists and photographers need to do, right? It's the exact same thing. And your art business and all that it can become is essentially these 2 trains on 2 tracks. On the first track is your craft, your talent, your vocation, what you're creating, how good you are at it, how good you will become, what different subject matter materials you're creating, the hours in the field with your cameras, the hours in the studio with your brush or your pencil, your palette knife, right? All of that is just a train on a track. And sometimes it's going to feel like it's really going fast. You've got the wind at your back, and sometimes it will feel like the train got derailed, okay, and it's off the tracks and you don't know what's going on. And all of that is totally good and totally normal. Your job is just to keep that train moving on that track as quickly as possible and don't ever let it stop. No brakes on that train. All right, we all know that. We all have that passion, that vocation. There's another train. The second train, the second cat, if you like, is your other craft, your other talent, your other location. Because you realize that there is no one out there that is going to market your art for you in any effective manner to actually help you build a business, you realize that this train on this track, that this cat is just as important as the first. No one's going to do it for you. It takes just as much practice as the first. It needs just as much dedication as the first. It is a train that sometimes will be going fast and other times at a crawl and other times feel like it's derailed. But again, all of that is good and totally normal. Your train is just to keep that, your job is just to keep that train on that track and keep it moving, right? To drive both of those cats, sometimes one at a time, sometimes simultaneously, and know that it's your job to get better and better and better. And it's okay if the level resets and you have to start all over again. Totally normal. And my position is that all of this is actually quite simple, but not easy. It's kind of been buzzing on Twitter recently, and I kind of like it. Simple, but not easy. And it's simple in the fact that, number one, it really simplifies your life. Again, if you're not working on moving either the first train or the second train down the track and you're working on something else, you're likely working on the wrong thing. Like the business is likely not growing. You can tell yourself you're busy, but unless you're working on A or working on train B, you're likely working on the wrong thing, right? And you can work on one and be busy at that and have a lot of focus on that. And then you can go and work on the other one. You can get frustrated with one and then you can go and work on the other one. The whole point is that you keep both of those trains moving down the track. That is the path. That is the way. 2 trains, 2 tracks. And your job is to make sure there's no brakes on either train. And I think it's actually really simple when you realize this, right? Now, of course it's simple. And of course it's not easy. Not easy, though, is the fact that most artists and photographers' expectations about what is possible, about how fast this is going to happen, and about how much money they're going to be making and how quick that's supposed to happen, I believe is utterly, totally, completely out of whack. And this just seems to be the general consensus out there. It's something that I continue to see across the board. And I think there is a huge gulf between expectations versus reality. And I think when you have the wrong expectations, it is utterly, totally, and completely a cancer that is going to derail you, demotivate you, depress you, put you in the depths, have you questioning yourself. Your mother was right. This should have been a hobby. And it's a killer, and I'm tired of seeing it, and I want it to stop. And this all comes, in a really, really interesting time in the creator economy writ large, okay? And it doesn't matter if you're an artist or a photographer, or you could be a financial advisor building your business on Twitter, or a podcaster about a sports team, or a talking head news reporter that's releasing your shows directly on the internet, right? Anything, a writer, a comedian, a musician, anyone really. The internet has and continues to completely disintermediate the entire media and creative business landscape. The power of the gatekeepers is gone. The bureaucracies and hoops we had that you used to have to jump through have been utterly, totally, and completely obliterated. And, the entire landscape and all these various different niches is utterly, totally, and completely, I said that twice, didn't I? Rife with individual creators with nothing more than their creativity and an internet connection building massive businesses. And that is such an exciting time. Like, just pause for a second, and the fact that there is no roadblocks in front of you, artist or photographer, in building a monster business aside from you're understanding the landscape and your own output, right? Like, that's amazing. It's a well and truly remarkable time to be alive as a content creator. And this was simply impossible, or nearly impossible to do, a few years, decades before. And every single solitary industry is getting completely disrupted by individual content creators. Essentially just individual content creators, sometimes with little teams, right? And for every crazy big story, for your Kardashians and what they've been able to do, or, for your Mr. Beast making YouTube videos about Squid Games to get more views than the actual show Squid Games, or Tucker Carlson leaving Fox and whatever his audience was, 3.5 million viewers, and now he's doing 7 to 10 million, 45 million on downloads on some of the show. Like, for all those crazy success stories in their own right about going through the existing channels versus doing it on their own, there's a ton of small ones too. Like individual sports team podcasters that started as a hobby and are broadcasting podcasts just about one team that are making 6 figures a year, supporting their favorite team. Or some of these crazy niche content providers I see, like, people that are doing quilting shows, quitting their day job, or music teachers selling courses direct and providing for their families. And, what I love about all of it, whether it's, someone that's massive like Mr. Beast or the Quilter Show, they all have one thing in common. They grinded for years and years and years before anything really substantial started happening in their businesses. They spent thousands of hours working on the 2 trains on the separate tracks. They created their craft, and then they spent the time marketing it, which brings me back to the expectations, right? Which brings me back to the simple, not easy. And this notion of expectations, i.e., I've created my art, I've created my photography, I'm so awesome, I'm going to throw it up on the internet, I'm not going to do any marketing, and boom, I'm going to have a huge business. Fish are going to jump into my boat. My audience is going to be like flicking the light switch. I think it's totally out of whack in this community. And I don't think anyone takes into account just how hard it is to get there. And Patrick, I've been doing this for 2 years and I haven't sold anything. I did everything that you said in that playbook. I made 10 reels and nothing happened. I didn't get any sales, right? And I don't understand where this expectation comes from or where it started. I mean, maybe as a society, all we do is we celebrate the winners and the big success stories and everything else. And, if there's 10 hours of coverage, there's 9 hours and 55 minutes on all the success. And then there's 5 minutes on the fact that this person worked 10 hours a day for 4 years until they even started making any progress, which is what I heard about Mr. Beast recently and like his crazy work ethic and for how long it was. But you don't need Mr. Beast levels of success or Kardashian levels of success, right? You can do what level of success you have designed for your business. The takeaway in all of it is the opportunity is greater than ever. It's absolutely amazing, but you're going to have to do some grinding on train number 2 to get there, right? It's going to take some time for you to cement yourself, for you to get good at marketing, for you to start enjoying it, for you to realize it's your second job. And I think when you come to terms with this fact, or facts in this case, the fact that it takes 3 to 5 years to build anything of value in today's day and age, Steve Jobs said that, that you might sell nothing or very little for your first few years as an artist or photographer starting out, that it's painful, hard, frustrating, deflating, and exhausting at first. But this is the path, though. This is the way that everybody has to go through. They have to fight through those periods of adversity, especially early on, till you get to a point where things start happening in your business. And I believe that when you come to terms with this, everything in your business will start to change. Everything will start to change. You end up with giving yourself the freedom and time to get the business going, right? To stay plugging away on both trains, your vocation, the art, but yes, also your new vocation, which is getting good at marketing and promoting yourself and learning how to sell it and learning how to social media market. And, you realize that the marketing train, like your art, can and will be a beautiful thing if you just apply your creativity to it and stay at it. You're not supposed to like it at first, okay? But in time, it really does become fun to figure out how you can leverage these incredible social media platforms to get the word out about your art, your photography. And I really do believe that there's never been a better time. There's never been a better time as an artist, as a photographer, as an individual content creator. I mean, the fact that we can press some buttons on a phone and create content, whether it's about you, your art, your process, or whether it's about you, what makes you tick, the artist, your brand. Are you into dogs? Are you into cats? Do you do CrossFit? Do you live in Hawaii, or do you live in Vermont? Are you a foodie? All of those things that get potential buyers bonded with you. The fact that we can tell those stories just using our phone and potentially reach thousands, tens of thousands, millions of people. I mean, there's never been a time in history like that. It's absolutely amazing. And it's simple to do. Simple, not easy. Not easy, right? We come to terms in all of this with the fact that none of us are entitled to absolutely anything aside from the sweat of our brow and the reach of our marketing. There's no one that's going to sell your art for you, your photography for you. There's no one that's going to go out and market Art Storefront as a business for us. Like, we have to do it. And consistency at the end of the day is undefeated. It is the winner 100% of the time that it is tried. And I realize that, setting these expectations up front is one of the most beneficial things that we can do for our customers. And so I'm hoping it's the same thing that's true for you, to my loyal listeners of the podcast. And it's like, I've seen over the years, and we're, no company's perfect. We certainly aren't. Like, when the expectations get set incorrectly, let's say somebody on the phones at Art Storefronts is trying to sign somebody up, and they're promising them this, and they're promising them that, and they're promising them the world, and oh yeah, they're going to take care of the marketing for you. Even if that person has great art, and even if that person is decent at marketing and has a serious aptitude to want to learn and has good technical acumen, when the expectations are set incorrectly, i.e. it's going to happen, it's going to be easy, it's going to be quick, you don't have to do anything, you can almost never rescue that person as a customer. It is such a powerful thing, this notice of setting your expectations correctly. And the flip side of it is, like, show me someone that's successful, that you define as successful, that's doing well, whether they're in a gallery, whether they're doing the shows and fairs, whether they've been written up in a magazine, whether they're selling tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And in every one of those cases, in every one of those instances, there is a backstory about how long and how hard they worked to get where they were. And that's okay. It's awesome. It's reality. So when you realize that, when you set your expectations accordingly, when you give yourself the freedom to struggle and suffer for those early years to get this business going, to get this business rolling, it is just such a massive advantage. You have the wind at your back. You have your expectations in the right place. You are going to work harder and for longer. When everyone else quits, when everyone else treats their marketing, the second train, the cat, like the New Year's resolution, right? I'm going to the gym. This is going to be my year, but the expectations are not set correctly. You're going to the gym 4 days a week in January. Times get tough. By March, you haven't been once all month. Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. You wake up, you're 80 years old, your life is over, and you never gave your art business a shot. It's all about expectations. It's all about having those correct expectations set. And when they are set correctly, where everyone else quits, you're going to go blowing by the Roadrunner status. Beep, beep, boom. You're going right past that trap every single solitary time because your expectations are set correctly. So I continue to find the properly set expectations is one of the greatest assets that you as an artist or a photographer can have. It's going to be tough at first. It's going to be some painful years. You're going to have to learn some technology that you don't probably like. You're going to have to get good at doing something. You're going to have to come out of your shell. You might have to start getting comfortable being on video for the first time, which none of us like. And all of it's all good because it's all part of the process and it's all focusing on that second train. You get those 2 trains humming on those 2 tracks. You get those 2 cats eating everything. You are going to be on the path to having a successful business that you are going to have for the rest of your art selling life. And there's never been a better time for it. That is exciting. That is really exciting. Now that that's off my chest, I can get back to the tactical for which this podcast is so heavily known by. Really hot on Instagram right now, getting incredible results on Instagram right now, marketing myself like a lunatic on Instagram right now. And so I've got a ton of stuff to teach on there. And it's going to start off with this next episode on what I believe should be the OMTM, the only metric that matters in your art and photography business right now. I'm going to explain that metric. I'm going to break down Instagram as a social media platform. And then we are going to get into the tactical show and tell how to do it, what you need to be doing, and how you can get that second train rolling on that track. As always, thanks for listening. Have a great day.